Hey, it's Liz D'Alto, and this is the Untame the Wild Soul Woman podcast. From body image, sex, spirituality, money and relationships, to motherhood, creativity, business, communication, and desire, Untame the Wild Soul Woman is the place to come for real stories and powerful advice to help you reclaim and redefine womanhood in the 21st century. What's up, wild ones? Welcome to episode number 173 of the Untame the Wild Soul podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth D'Alto, and before we get into today's show, I want to invite you to join us for Wild Soul Summer School. It's a free 10-week series that I put together based on all of your comments, all of your questions, all of your insights that you're all always sharing with me via social media, inside our Facebook group, over on my own Facebook page, whenever you listen to these episodes. So I pay attention to those, I take notes on those, and I've put together 10 weeks of things that you guys are super curious about. And I know you're super curious about it. So for example, the last few weeks, we covered how to cultivate and connect to your feminine, how to integrate masculine and feminine energy, how to let things go for good. Next week, I'll be diving into how to actually do surrender. The week after that, I'll be covering how to trust yourself. We get that question a lot. So here's the deal. It's going on my Facebook page via Facebook Live. They're short 15 to 20 minute sessions every Wednesday at noon Pacific time. Cool thing with Facebook Live is as soon as I'm done with the live video, it just posts automatically to the page. So I'm shooting these through July 26th, 2017, and I will leave them up for your viewing pleasure through August, probably the middle of August. So you have plenty of time to check these out. Each week, I'm also creating a complimentary piece of content to go with it. So we post them on the blog and we make another free download for you, whether it's an instructional video, a worksheet, master notes, something tutorial to complement each one, because here's the big purpose: to help deepen your exploration, but also implementation of all the great stuff that you're learning here. I love hearing from you. I love hearing that, you get introduced to so many amazing things on the show. So I want to make sure you're actually using it, that you're incorporating it into your life in a way that's useful, and you're not just consuming more and more content. So head on over to facebook.com/Elizabeth D'Alto, like and follow the page so you get the notifications for Wild Soul Summer School. Keep an eye out. Again, we're doing this through July 26th, and I'm super excited to connect with you over there. Now, for today's episode, today's guest, Melissa Ambrosini and I, jammed on some Untame the Wild Soul favorite topics. Things like self-acceptance, body love, being nicer to ourselves, and how awareness has to precede transformation. We also got into some of her signature work on mastering your mean girl. And she shared a 3-step process that you're going to love because it's super simple and also very straightforward. This was a fun and interesting conversation that even ventured into how to talk about sex with young kids, coming off medication for anxiety, and more. So enjoy this so much. The show notes can be found at untameyourself.com/episode-173. And let's get going. I'm here today with Melissa Ambrosini. Melissa is someone that I've recently connected with, and you all know how we go on the show. A lot of people that come on are like close friends of mine, and it's like catching up and deep diving. Some people are new friends or new acquaintances, and we get to explore, and you kind of get to be the fly on the wall for the getting to know each other process. And so Melissa and I only connected really briefly a couple weeks ago, so this is going to be one of those deep exploration type episodes, so it'll be super fun. So Melissa, the only planned question we have for anyone is, what do you love about being a woman?
Goodness me, so many things. I think one of the most amazing things about being a woman is that each month we get to go through this birth, this death, this rebirth, and we get to experience our moon cycle, and we get to kind of go through these ebbs and flows. And I just think it's so beautiful. It makes life colorful. I think if we were just like this the whole time, it'd be boring. And I think it's awesome that we get to experience these ebbs and flows and ups and downs and roller coasters, and we're feeling elated, and then we might feel seriously depressed. And then it's just like this up and down. I think it's cool.
Did you always think that was cool?
No, definitely not. No way. I mean, even something like my moon cycle was something that I suppressed, as for many years, going on the pill and not celebrated I didn't celebrate my body and I didn't celebrate my moon cycle. I now think it's such a beautiful gift, and I now celebrate it each and every month. You know, I'm so proud of my body. I'm so proud of being a woman and getting to experience this. And I'm proud that my body's healthy and strong and that it goes through that every single month. It's pretty amazing when you actually kind of look at what our body goes through. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So how did you get cool with that? Or what was, I'm going to ask a better question. What was there an impetus? Was there a moment or an event or experience or whatever? What incited your curiosity that got you in the direction of being able to appreciate it? Does that make sense?
I think years and years of self-loathing and body shaming. I grew up in the performing arts world. So I was actually a professional dancer and I did TV presenting and a little bit of acting. And so I grew up watching women just shame their body. I mean, we already are exposed to it so much, but being in that industry, you know, it's heightened even more. And I guess beating down on my body for so many years, I ended up in 2010 in hospital, very, very sick, very unhappy and unwell. And that was where Pandora's box was opened for me. Yeah. That was the seed of personal development, self-love, self-care. That was where it kind of all was exposed to me back in 2010. And from there, I have literally just continued to pull back onion layers, pull them back, discover more about myself, pull them back and keep going. And I'm still on my journey. I'm not enlightened. I'm not, otherwise I would have, levitated out of this body by now, but I'm still here and I'm still learning my lessons and wanting to grow and evolve and be the best version of myself. But I think, with a lot of deep exploration and self-awareness and personal development work, I've really come to love and accept myself, love and accept my body. And no longer do I do the body shaming that I used to do in my early 20s. And I see it so much with young women. But, of course there's days where I might go, oh, but not like I used to. No.
Yeah, it passes. This comes up in conversation a lot in my groups and with my women in my community and even my clients. It's like, so many people, I think, misinterpret a lot of self-help and spirituality to think, oh, the goal is like, I don't judge anyone anymore, or I don't shame myself at all ever, or I just eradicate the negative self-talk. But like the fact of the matter is, unless, like you were saying, unless I become like an enlightened Zen master or some kind of ascended master, I'm probably always going to do that, even if it's just less and less and less over time. And it's less about figuring out how to not do it at all and more about how to manage the moments and just get really much better at what do you do when it comes up. Would you agree with that? It's okay if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when it does come up, the more you practice this, the quicker and quicker you get at returning back to your truth, which is, what my book, Mastering Your Mean Girl, is all about. Because, I say your mean girl is that inner critic.
Yes.
And the more you practice, it's like going to the gym. The more you practice squats, the better you're going to get at them. Yeah. The more you practice mastering that inner critic voice that comes up and says you're not good enough or you're not pretty enough or who do you think you are or you can't release your dream business, whatever it is, the quicker you get at mastering that and returning back to your truth, that is the real strength. Like that's the ultimate goal, because it is going to come up and it will probably for the rest of our lives, it'll pop up. But, the more we practice this self-awareness, the stronger and the quicker we get at returning back to our truth.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm super curious. So you know how, and I know you went to IIN, you did the nutrition school, right?
Yeah.
So you know how in nutrition, there's like the trigger foods. There's the stuff that like, regardless of anyone's relationship with food, whether it's like your hormones or whatever, there's just certain things that we know if I start eating that, I'm not going to be able to stop. So I'm wondering, what's the equivalent for you in terms of what are the trigger things that spark that inner critic for you? You know, like I know what my couple are and I'll share them in a second. But for you, what's the stuff like, so if we're using the food analogy, the stuff that's better for me to just keep out of my house, what's the stuff that's best for you in your like internal landscape for your own mental health and managing that mean girl to just keep out of your experience?
What first popped up is health stuff for me. So yeah, that you know, one of my stories is that growing up as a child, I got a lot of attention from being unwell or sick.
Okay.
So if there's anything, if I'm ever feeling, this is something that, if I'm ever feeling like I'm getting a little bit sick, it usually triggers, oh my God, you're going to spiral down and you're not going to get, like, it kind of just spirals from there. And how I stop that is by my awareness, being aware of sliding back into those old stories that I used to tell myself. I used to have some triggers around, you know, business, not so much anymore. But I love the analogy of the trigger foods. And I guess the trigger things for me are when I get these little tingles, or like I'm pushing myself too hard, or overworking or stress. That kind of are my triggers to really come back and pull back. But that's probably the biggest one, the health stuff.
Yeah. I have two I can think of. And for whatever reason, in context, mainly for me, I'm thinking about the things that I just cannot follow on social media.
Yes. Oh, that's a really good one. Yeah.
So for me, it's like fitness stuff. And it also comes from like, that used to be what I did, and it's just not my world anymore. But I could get really easily hooked into, even though like I get it, like I just can't look at like super fit people, all the workouts. Like it's really easy for me to still get triggered into like, should I be doing that? And it's like, I could know damn well, A, that I don't need to, and B, that I'm not gonna, but I still get hooked by that. And then there's just a handful of people whose businesses, I don't envy their business, but there's either something about their model or the way that they express themselves or their like prolific creativity that like, I just can't follow them because I'm gonna get like hooked into that thinking of like, I should be further along, when in reality, these people have been doing things for like 8, 10, 12 years longer than me. So it makes no sense to make that comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, actually, social media is a big one. There are days where, you know, I can look at it and feel totally neutral. And then there's days where anything could trigger me, you know, anything at all. Like, and I'm, you know, I'm so content with where I'm at within my business. But yeah, like if I'm not if I'm not confident and comfortable in my own skin that day, maybe I've just started my moon cycle or maybe something's just happened, then those sorts of things that usually wouldn't really trigger me possibly could.
Yeah, I was actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking totally, I'm most susceptible to that kind of stuff when I'm in like the PMS cycle, right before I start my bleed. I'm like, that's what I'm most likely to be poked. Totally sensitive during that time. Super cool. So tell us more. I love this idea about managing the mean girl. And your book's been out for a while, right?
Yes, it's been out for just over a year.
Cool. What sparked that? I love to geek out. Let's geek out on both the actual book itself, but also the creative process, because I'm sure you had to deal with your mean girl in the process of putting a book into the world. No easy task.
Oh my gosh. Literally, as I sat down to write the book, like I opened Mastering Your Mean Girl with this internal dialogue. Like, you can't do this. Who do you think you are? No one's going to buy it. Give up before you humiliate yourself. Like that was my internal dialogue.
Yeah.
as I actually sat down to write this book. But because of all the work I'd done, I was able to see that was what was going on, because awareness is absolute key. Like, awareness is key to any transformation. And I was able to see that this is what was going on. So I was able to move forward anyway. But what most people do is they have that internal dialogue go off in their head. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not pretty enough. Who do you think you are? You'll never get out of debt. You'll never meet the guy. You're not sexy enough. And then they believe that internal dialogue to be true. Right. Which is not the case. Like, that is not your truth. So I guess for me, when I hit rock bottom in 2010 and I ended up in hospital, incredibly sick, I had a whole host of health issues and I was so unhappy. I was on antidepressants and I had an eating disorder and I was physically and mentally very unwell. And from there, one of the first things that I did was really understood the idea of food as medicine. That was my first entry point. And I was exposed to this whole holistic world of mind, body, spirit alignment. So it wasn't just about what I was putting in my body. It was what thoughts I was thinking, how I was moving my body. I was exposed to yoga and meditation and affirmations and all of these amazing tools that we have access to. And I started to feel better. And I literally was like, why have we not been taught this stuff in school? Like, why have we not been given these tools to cope with life in school? Now, I didn't grow up with esoteric parents. I didn't have parents that meditated. I didn't have any of that. I grew up with very the standard Australian diet, the standard,
which is what? So for those of us not in Australia, what's standard Australian diet look like?
It's like the standard American diet.
Got it. Cool.
Like, it just...
Are the portions of food super big? Because actually, you know Susanna Frioni, right?
Yes.
Susanna was visiting me in November. We ran an event here together in San Diego, and we went out to lunch one day, and she's like, God, the portions are so big. Are your portions, I guess, not as big as here?
No, not as big as America. No way.
But the quality of the food is the same. Like that's standard. Got it. Cool. And then I'm super curious. I've never asked anyone this in Australia before. Is there like, a lot of the U.S. is based around like Christianity, Judaism. Like, those are big religions here. What are the popular religions in Australia?
Yeah, Catholicism, Judaism, Christianity, same sort of thing. So I grew up in a very, very Catholic Italian family.
Me too, girl.
So like very strict. We went to church every Sunday. I had to say my prayers, say my sins at nighttime before I went to bed. Say the Our Father every night before I went to sleep, confess my sins, all those sorts of things. So that was, I guess, the most spiritual I had, anything spiritual I had been exposed to.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in this very standard way of life. And I realized when I was in hospital, I had a dear friend gift me a spiritual text, which I devoured. And that was when all these light bulbs started to happen in my mind. I was like, why aren't we taught this? And then I started a website. I started a blog. This was back in 2010. Like, no one really had blogs back then. Now everyone has one. And I started sharing my experience, like my struggle with my body image and my struggle with my relationship with food and this self-loathing that I was dealing with. And I started talking about this inner mean girl. And everyone that was reading my work was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. Yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you for being so honest and vulnerable and sharing this. And that was the snowball effect. That kind of just snowballed from there. I started writing ebooks and creating online programs and doing speaking gigs. And now it's just literally snowballed from there, where I've got, these amazing books, these online products. I speak all over the world, and I've got this amazing community of women that just want to be the best version of themselves, want to create the most amazing life possible for themselves. And, if you had have asked me before I hit rock bottom, like, would I be doing this? I would have laughed. Like, totally. No way in the world. I was hell bent on doing acting and dancing and TV presenting. And, this is just beyond my wildest dreams. I didn't know this type of inner fulfillment really existed. I wasn't taught any of this, so I had to learn my own.
It's so fascinating to me how many people who have had similar issues to what you've described, whether it's body image, eating disorder, stuff like that, come from some kind of performing arts background.
Wow. Is that a common thread?
Yeah, I've noticed it. And I can think of probably like at least half a dozen people that they were, especially dance. Because I think like the shape and the form of the body makes such a big difference. I mean, so many people I know whose story came from being told like, you're too big to dance. Like, that's not going to work for you. And then just like this lifelong shame. So what was the spiritual text? Do you mind telling us, like, that first book that kind of woke you up?
It was Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life.
I think that's probably so many people. It's funny, I've still never read that. There's two books that I would probably credit to like different layers of my awakening. One would be Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements. So simple and timeless. And then in terms of like a more feminine oriented awakening, people on the podcast already know what I'm going to say. They're in their cars or wherever they listen to the podcast going, we know, Awakening Shakti by Sally Kempton. But it's just so freaking amazing. So super cool. I want to circle back to something you said because I'm such an advocate of this. Again, it kind of goes back to that thread that we started to go down of like, it's not that you're not going to judge yourself or other people anymore. It's not that you're ever going to be unkind to yourself ever again. But it's what do you do when it comes up? So you said something about feeling these things and moving forward anyway. That is the stuff, right? Being able to, awareness, you said this earlier, the mega key to any transformation, being able to notice it first of all, and then having the tools and having the discipline, right? Because sometimes it's so much easier to like be a little bit lazy and just indulge it. But we know what happens when we start to do that. It spirals out of control. So what else under that umbrella of being able to feel it, notice it, but just move forward anyway? Because I'm kind of naturally inclined that way, and so I love asking people. That's where a lot of people get stuck. How do you help people? I'm sure it's in your book too. How do you moving through the stuckness?
So I have a three-step mastering your mean girl process, which people can do daily.
Yeah.
And it's important to know as well, we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So that is potentially 60 to 80,000 mean girl thoughts. So 60 to 80,000, I'm not good enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not whatever enough, you're not good enough, whatever it is. That's a lot, right? Men have around 40,000. So they have almost half the amount of internal dialogue than we have. So when you first start this awareness, you could potentially be mastering your mean girl 60 to 80,000 times a day. And that's okay, because the more and more you practice it, it'll get to 40,000, 30,000, 20,000. And then you have these long gaps in between that internal inner mean girl.
Yes.
Where there's just presence and bliss and love and joy. Mm-hmm. But the more you practice this, it's like any muscle, the longer those gaps in between become. So my 3-step process that I do every single day, when mine pops up, I take myself through this 3-step process daily. And the more you practice this, the quicker and quicker you get at it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that just has to be practiced daily.
Yeah.
So the first step in mastering your mean girl is awareness. You need to be aware. So that looks like there she goes again telling me I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Or there she goes again telling me I'll never get out of debt. Or there she goes again telling me I'll never meet the guy, or that I'm not sexy enough, or that I'm not pretty enough, whatever it is. So when we have that awareness, it's like there's been light shone on the darkness. And it's no longer dark, you can see. And you can't unknow what you now know. Unless you fall over, hit your head, and have a serious head injury, you cannot unknow what you now know.
Yeah.
So for me, there's nowhere to hide. I'm like, there she is again, okay, telling me that I'm not going to, do this or whatever it is.
What I love about that so much is the not identifying with her. Right? Whoever she is. Oh, there she is again. Because I think that's one of the things, so many women were really cultured and programmed to think like we're wrong or we're bad, like, or we're less than or whatever, for whatever reason. And so I think by like separating yourself from the thinking part of your mind that's saying the shitty mean girl thoughts, I think that's so big because it's not like you. Like the part of you that loves yourself is not the part of you that's shitty to yourself, And I think making that distinction and making that separation, that alone is monumental for people.
Totally. That is why I called it the inner mean girl. And it helps people to visualize what she looks like. I mean, and there are so many texts that call it the inner critic, fear, ego, smaller self, shadow self. You can call it Bob, Mary. I don't care really what you call it. But what giving it a little title does is help separate it from your truth.
Love it.
Because the truth of who you are is not those limiting beliefs. It's not who you really are. Awesome. So for me, I can see what my mean girl looks like, and she'll pop up on my shoulder, and she's me basically, but just like a tiny version, like this big. And she's actually wearing a little red devil outfit because when I used to be a dancer, I did this dance called Dance with the Devil.
Oh, no
and
way.
I wore this little red like horns, and I had a pitchfork. She's in that outfit. And it kind of makes her a little bit cuter too. So I don't hate on her too much. But by giving it a character and a name helps separate it from the truth of who you are, which is not those limiting thoughts.
Cool. So that's the first step. What's the second one?
Second step is you close the door. You gently close the door on those thoughts, okay? So when she comes knocking on your door to plant those seeds of you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, instead of inviting her in and letting her come in for a cup of tea and sleep over, think of her like an annoying salesperson. Like, an annoying salesperson that comes knocking on your front door to sell you something that you have no interest in, and they want to give you their hour-long spiel on their product and how amazing it is. You say, oh, thank you, but no thank you, I'm not interested today.
Yeah.
And same when your mean girl comes to plant that seed in your mind. You say, thank you, but no thank you. I'm too busy living my dream life. I don't have time today. And, some days you will let her in. And some days you'll let her sleep over and sleep in your bed and wear your clothes and hang out. But she's like that annoying house guest that is so messy and such a slob and has outstayed her welcome. So we need to say thank you, but no thank you, not interested today. And we gently close the door on her. It's not about slamming the door in her face. It's not about killing the ego or smashing the ego. A lot of spiritual texts talk about that, but it's not about that.
Destroy the ego.
Yeah. No. Use it as your compass. Use it as your guide to come back on your true path. That's what I use it as for me. I go, oh, I was like going off just then. I was going off to a more destructive route. I was going off down a dark alley, which isn't serving me. So I use it as my guide to come back to my true path. So then once the second step, gently close the door on her. The third step is we choose love again, and it's very simple. she is fear, and we need to come back to love. Well, what would love do in that moment? What would love do? Come back into your heart space. I think it's the Dalai Lama that says the longest journey we'll ever take is 18 inches from our head to our heart.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can feel like, oh my God, just ginormous. But it really is, one of the most challenging things to do at times. It can feel so challenging. But honestly, the more you practice this, the more you do this work, the easier it gets. And it's a very simple 3-step process. And I take myself through it all the time.
Here's what I like about this so much. We talk about this. It comes up probably like every couple conversations on the podcast. I'm really big on drawing people's attention to the places and spaces where we all could potentially be spiritually bypassing, right? Like using our tools, using our personal development, little tricks and tactics and whatever to bypass the very things we need to pay attention to. And this 3-step process that you just gave us, it's super simple, but it fully acknowledges what's the reality of the situation in a super healthy way. Right? You're not beating yourself up about it. You're not, because I think there's 2 sides of the spectrum. There's like the spiritual bypassing and then like the spiritual punishing, right? Or like the overindulgence of like, oh, well, let me deconstruct this and let me unpack this and let me blow. It's like, it's actually still like keeping you there mired in it. Maybe you're not being mean to yourself, but you're just like over investigating. Your 3-step thing that you just gave us goes, here's how you like efficiently and effectively and responsibly handle this in any given moment. So super awesome. Love that.
And I think it's really important it's not about never feeling anger or frustration anything ever again. I think that was when I first kind of was exposed to this work. I was like, well, I just got to be happy and rainbows and butterflies for the rest of my life.
24/7.
24/7. But I'm like, that isn't the reality.
That's bypass.
You are going to be triggered. And what I do now is I allow myself to feel it. Like if I feel angry, I freaking allow myself to feel angry. If I feel sad, I allow myself to feel sad. And I let it wash over me like a wave. Like I live on Bondi Beach in Australia, and so I swim in the ocean every day. And as the waves go over me, I let whatever, I call it my aura cleanse. And when I dive in the water, and if there's anything I'm holding on to, I'm like, right, feel it. And then let it wash over me like this wave is going to wash over me.
Yeah.
And then I take myself through that little 3-step process. It's not about feeling rainbows and butterflies and happy and all the time. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And it passes. When you just like acknowledge it and allow yourself to feel it, it passes so much quicker than when you stuff it, and then have to have some kind of interesting explosion or illness. Quick break in the show to let you all know that the Wild Soul Movement virtual program will reopen for enrollment in the month of July. July 7th through August 4th. You'll be able to join the class of 2017. If you're not familiar with Wild Soul Movement, you can head on over to wildsoulmovement.com/waitlist so you can be the first to know when the program reopens and when all the information is available for you. I'm letting you know this now so that you can get on that wait list, because for those who join us between July 7th and July 10th, I have a special early bird action taker bonus. It's a little bonus course and bonus integration calls with me that I'm super, super excited to spend some extra time with those action-taking women, the women who are ready to commit to themselves, who are into the deep work that we do in Wild Soul Movement. And in case you don't know about Wild Soul Movement, there's 4 main topics that we work through: surrender and release, trust and receiving, wild dreaming and desire, and love and creation. The entire goal of the program is for you to become the living, breathing embodiment of feminine truth and power, to implement and integrate so many of the things we talk about here on the show, but through your body, through connecting with your soul's wisdom and your own truth. It is so freaking juicy. I've been running this program for almost 4 years now. There is alumni in our Facebook group. There's women who've been doing it now almost all 4 years. So it's a really juicy, a really rich experience. So again, if you're interested in that and you want to take advantage of those bonuses, head on over to wildsoulmovement.com/waitlist so you will be the first to know when we open things up on July 7th. Now back to the show. So I'm super curious. This is just something there's usually some kind of docket of like 3 to 6 things that I'm really geeking out on in my own personal like studies, exploration, curiosity. And so you mentioned this. It might not be something you prefer to talk about, so please feel free to be like, I'm not getting into that. But you did mention coming off of antidepressants, yeah?
Yeah.
Are you able to chat about what that experience was like? And I'll give you the context. I've just been so interested lately in this relationship between like Eastern and Western, right? Like spiritual principles and practices, but also sometimes some people are over medicated. Some people are on medications they don't need to be. Some people really do need to be. But then there's that space in between, whether you needed them or not, of coming off. That's like a really delicate time.
To be honest, I was so numb that whole period in my life, I just felt numb.
Got it.
I felt so numb, so heavy. There was such a heaviness. There was such a sadness. There was so much darkness and numbness. And, you know, again, my mum was a nurse, is still a nurse. So whenever we had a little sniffle or a little sore throat, we were straight on antibiotics. We were, you know, there was always a pill to fix everything. I took, you know, Roaccutane, a type of Roaccutane for your skin, antidepressants, like so many things that, like, if I had the awareness that I have now, would never let in my temple.
Yeah.
You know, even the pill, you know, things like that. But I just didn't have the knowledge. And this is why, you know, when I was laying in hospital, I was like, why isn't this taught? Like, why aren't we taught? And when I went to the doctor and she popped me on antidepressants and sent me to a psychologist, I just was like, okay, well, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know. I was never exposed to any other way. And I think if we can expose younger women and men too, young boys, if we can just expose both the Western, both the Eastern, and put it on a plate in front of them, they can choose.
Yeah.
And I have an 11-year-old stepson, and that is what I really want to inspire within him. So when he lives with us, he lives a very spiritual, esoteric life where, you know, we meditate and we do maybe woo-woo things in this household. And then he goes and lives with his mom, who is the complete opposite. And he is exposed to both.
Yeah. And
I think it's beautiful because he's going to grow up and have the option to be able to choose, well, does this feel good or does this not feel good? But I never had that exposure and I never had that option. I just was taught, this is what you do. You get a sore throat, you have antibiotics.
Yeah.
You suppress your emotions, you brush them under the carpet. You don't, you know, where, you know, in our house, it's all about expression. It's all about how do you feel? What's going on? How can we move through this? Gratitude is something that we're really, you know, strong on in this household, and sexuality. You know, he's 11 and we talk to him openly about sex and lovemaking and connection. And even though he's, you know, 11, we want to expose him to that because, again, that was something else in my house that was shoved under the carpet and not spoken about. So, you know, I think if we can expose our children to all of the options, they then can choose what feels good for them.
Yeah, I love to describe that as, you know, there's so many of us, we grow up with like, you know, a little cafe menu of options. We think there's like, oh, these are the limited options on the menu. But in reality, it's like a diner menu where there's just pages and pages and items, you know? Can we go into that a little bit more? So what does a conversation with an 11-year-old about sex look like that, I mean, I want to say, quote, is age appropriate? That's like, you're not planting ideas about things that they're not even asking questions about yet, but really honoring and respecting what their curiosities are. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, one thing that we do is, in my growing up, sex was never spoken about. And, I never even saw my parents nude. And if I did, it was like, oh, get out, that's dirty, or that's naughty. Yeah. It was very dirty and naughty and rude, where something that we want to encourage with him is celebrating his body. Yeah. So, we let him see us naked. We celebrate the beauty of our body. We're always complimenting each other. We're complimenting ourselves. We used to have this little game where we lived in an apartment with a lift, and there was a mirror in the lift, and we'd get in, and from ground to our floor, we had to look at ourselves and say 3 things that we love about ourselves. Cool. And so we'd go, and it would be really funny. We'd go one at a time, and I'm like, I love my eyes, I love my hair color, and I love my skin. Go. And then he goes, and then, we'd all have a little turn, and we'd end up just laughing and having a little joke, because we want to really encourage him to celebrate his body, celebrate the beauty and the gift of the temple that he's been given. That's something that, it was prudish in my household, and same with my husband. He grew up, he's English, so his mom is very, very prudish, and everything's covered up and, not spoken about. But, one thing that we do with him is we don't hide away that we're making love. We'll say to him, when we first kind of got together, we would say to him, if the door is closed, it means we're making love. And unless you want to see that, don't walk in. So it's not secretive. It's not like, and it's not something to be secretive and shy about, because I think when you're secretive about it, yes, it then is naughty and it's not allowed. And then that's when you go and have sex in the back of the bushes at the party, or you go and have sex in the back of a car. And, I've done some things that I'm definitely not proud of in my time. But I want to create a safe environment for not only for him to be able to express, but I don't want him being a teenager and having sex in the back of a car, or the back of, a public toilet, or in a park, or at a school dance. Like, if that's something he wants, like, I want to create an environment where he feels safe enough to, be under my roof.
I love that, because you were saying something earlier about like your family, and even with nudity around like, oh, get out, like that's dirty, that's not, it's inappropriate. And even just like the secretiveness or the hiding, there is, but not addressing it, right? There's a difference between addressing that like privacy is safe and okay and important, and like what a closed door means, and like what's okay to do behind a closed door, or what should actually be done behind a closed door, because it's like respectful of self, not even just of others, and what needs to be hidden away because it's shameful, and the not even talking about it. So I got a lot of that, like, things are happening, but we're not talking about it. Like, I've said this before on the show. If I would buy, a shirt that was tight, I knew my mom thought it was tight, it would disappear in the laundry. Yeah. So it wasn't addressed. It wasn't talked about. It just went away, which sent the message loud and clear. We think this is wrong, or we think this is inappropriate, or this isn't okay. But without the explicit acknowledgement of why, or even coming to the understanding around it, it just made me feel like bad or wrong or ashamed, rather than potentially opening up a conversation, So I dig the way you guys are opening up conversations.
And that's another thing, I have this little silver box in my bathroom, and it's got my moon pads in it, and my juju cup, and my jade egg. And he came in one day and he's like, what's this box? And I was like, well, you open it. And he was like, what are all these things? Like, what's this and what's this and what's this? And I was explaining, I was like, well, each month, we bleed, and I was explaining to him what we go through, and he was just like, whoa. And then it kind of went over his head, and he was out the door playing with Lego, 5 minutes later. But again, I didn't give him a full lesson on it, but I just explained to him, about fertility and making babies, as much as you can to an 11-year-old.
Please tell me how you described the jade egg. Did you?
Well, I kind of wasn't sure what to do there. I just was like, well, this is a jade egg, and it's got really healing powers.
Cool.
And it activates all of the nerve endings. We have trillions of nerve endings in our uterus, and it activates them. And I just kind of said it goes in there, and that was the extent of that conversation. I was like trying to look for my husband, like, where do I go from here? Like, what do I do?
I love that.
I didn't want to lie to him, and I didn't want to keep it a secret, or I don't want him to have any shame or any taboo around this stuff. I just don't. I had it all my life, and it made me hate on my body and think I was doing something wrong. I thought I was dirty, and I thought I was rude and naughty. And that's not what I want for him. Yeah,
awesome. I love it so much. So, Melissa, when we talk about untaming yourself, it essentially just means coming home to your true nature. So I'm always so curious in your own landscape of personal work or spiritual development or self-care, whatever it is, what are some things that you're either geeking out on right now or doing in your own personal work to really be connected or go even deeper into connecting with your own power or truth, or however it is that you think of that?
I definitely try and stay as connected to that as much as possible. And one of the ways I do that is through meditation. Just sitting in complete stillness helps me reconnect with my true self. And so that's something that I practice every day.
How long do you sit for?
I sit for 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, in the afternoon. And I mean, for me, it just works. Some people don't do it. Some people, I just love it. I've been meditating since 2010. I just love it. Yeah. I dabbled in it for a few years and got really serious about 4 years ago. And I've just seen such great results within myself, my stress levels, anxiety, because anxiety and panic attacks were something else that I was, medicated for. So for me, it just helps. I love it. It's my church. It's my coffee, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And what's really cool? So for many years, I couldn't sit in stillness. It's actually one of the reasons I created Wild Soul Movement, because I needed a moving meditation practice. And then over the last few years, I found myself actually craving the stillness. I had finally gotten to a place, not that everyone needs to, but for me, I was like, oh, I want a seated stillness practice. Now, I probably never sit for more than anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes, but that's what works for me. And so I just love giving people, permission and just planting the seed. Always revisit something. Might not have worked for you 5 years ago or even last year, but it might work now,
Totally. And a few things that really, really work for me is Mother Nature, connecting with Mother Nature. Like I said before, I live on the beach. So every day I swim in the ocean. I get my feet on the sand or on the grass every single day. It's just watching the sunrise, watching the sunset. For me, I never grew up loving and appreciating Mother Nature until I, really felt the healing power of it and just how it reconnects you and brings you back and makes you present. And then another thing is dancing. Obviously, I was a dancer for so many years, but I've only just revisited it. So I have had 6 years off dancing where I didn't want anything to do with it after, leaving that industry. And I've just started revisiting it now, and the expression and how it makes me feel and the total presence, like I'm having so much fun. And it's not choreographed or styled. It's just free movement.
Yeah.
I do some classes where you just do free dance.
I was going to ask about that. So what was the type of dance? Was it like ballet or modern, or what was the professional dancing you were doing?
I did ballet, modern, tap, jazz, everything.
So
hip-hop,
all very structured things, yeah?
Very structured.
And choreographed.
Contemporary.
Got it.
Yes.
And so now
never
more
any
free-flowing
free.
movement. Got it.
Yeah.
It's cool. Right? And of course, I'm sure the movement available to you, because you have that muscle memory and your body knows and you have all that training, it's probably so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't care what I look like, where all my life, whilst I was a professional dancer, it was all about what you looked like. I mean, you dance in front of mirrors and you just analyze everything. It's like, I'm not good. You know, that was what I saw from the age of 3. So for me, it's like, this is just free flow and doesn't matter what you look like. It's just all about how it feels in your body.
You know, it's so funny. I've told this story on the podcast before too, but when I was 3, I went to dancing school. I started dancing school. And very shortly thereafter, I got invited to leave because my friend Jillian and I, we giggled too much. And I have often felt like I've had a couple different feelings around that, but one of them is really that like that was life kind of protecting me. I feel like I dodged a bullet because I never would have been, my body type never would have been acceptable in a dance world ever. Like I've essentially been curvy since like the 3rd grade. You know, like that would have been like this bubble butt, these titties, they would have been like, sorry, girl, get out of here. Not gonna happen in this space. And who knows, like the trajectory of my life could have been way different. So fascinating. Well, Melissa, thank you so much for sharing all that with us. We're going to put links in the show notes. We always link to everything. Your book, your website is your name, melissaambrosini.com. The book's available. You've got all these other cool courses and programs and stuff. So thank you so much. I always like to ask people, is there anything I didn't ask you or anything just like based on the conversation we have that you feel super compelled to share before we sign off? By the way, totally cool for the answer to be like, no, I'm complete. But if you have any closing thoughts that you want to drop before we push the exit button.
Oh, God. I guess, you know, something that I didn't realize was possible is that you can actually live a life beyond your wildest dreams. You know, if someone had have said that to me, I would have probably punched them in the face and gone, whatever. But now that I have experienced it and I know that it's possible, I just wish, my wish and my mission is for everyone to feel that and to have that. You know, we didn't come here to suffer. God, the universe, Buddha, whatever you believe in, didn't put you in this earth suit, in this space and time right now to suffer. You didn't. You know, we don't have to feel pain and struggle and suffering every single day. We came here to grow and learn and evolve our human consciousness. And when you really remember that the truth of who you are is love and that we came here to play and evolve, life becomes so much more fun and so much more rewarding. And my wish is just that everyone realizes that they didn't come here to suffer and that you can live a life beyond your wildest dreams. It truly, truly is possible. And I just want everyone to realize that.
Cool. That's amazing. Well, Melissa, thank you so much. Again, we'll link up to all the things in the show notes, all the social media, if people want more of you in their beautiful worlds. So thank you. Thank you to everybody listening, and we'll see you later.
Thanks, beautiful.
So that's listen, but also be able to recognize where those problems intersect with your abilities and your passion. Yeah. Because if you're not passionate about it, then don't do it. You know, if one of those people who, if you're in a business and people who follow you run into you in person and they want to talk about stuff in your business, if you want to run the other way, you probably want to get out of that business. And that's where I was with Underground Wellness. I no longer want to hang out with those people. Not that I have any problem with those people, but I didn't want to talk about gluten and the difference between celiac and non-celiac gluten sensitivity and lectins and all this stuff. Like I was done. Yeah. Right. And, you know, I think there's this cycle that I read about recently called Create, persist, destroy, create, persist, destroy. And that's the cycle of our lives. I had to get to the point with Underground Wellness where I said, this isn't fulfilling me anymore. And I'm starting to get a little angry about it.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people are in that with their jobs right now. They've been in it for like 10, 20 years, maybe. They've been in that cycle of destroy. Like, I'm not digging this anymore. But then we have to make the choice to get rid of it in order to create something new.